Welcome back, everybody. Before we formally start the afternoon, I just want to encourage anybody to come and sit at the front. We have some seats available at the front, and we always have seats available on the side furthest from the door. So please fill out closest to the stage. It's always lovely to have you and have faces close to the stage. So there's some seats right here in the front, also on the front row over here. Thank you very much for sitting there. And please don't let him sit alone. We've got plenty of opportunity to make new friends in the front row. And we'll start in just 2 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your lunch break. There'll be plenty more opportunities for networking and meeting new contacts and just having wonderful conversations this evening as well. But again, as you have already seen from the program, we do have a very special and charged agenda. We're going to talk about climate. We're going to talk about energy transitions. And for that, first of all, I welcome Teresa Ribera onto the stage, because at the moment, Europe, as we all know, we've heard it all morning and we know it anyhow, is pressing ahead with ambitious climate action, even as the global dynamics shift. And the coming years are decisive for cutting emissions, reinforcing industrial resilience, and ensuring sustainable growth. And so Teresa Ribera is Executive Vice President for a clean, just and competitive transition with the European Commission, and she's going to elaborate further.
Good afternoon, everybody. Dear President of the European Investment Bank, dear President of the African Development Bank, dear friends and colleagues, it is my great pleasure to be here. Thanks for this timely invitation to discuss priorities and adequate response in these challenging times. I grew up trusting democracy, solidarity, international law, human rights, respect. And I am convinced that these are still the main things to fight for. These are topics that do matter to our citizens, business, to investors, and they also matter to our neighbors and partners. This is what we could call part of our European dream: peace, prosperity. And this week proves once again how deeply interrelated the different aspects of reality are. You asked me to comment on energy and climate, on how to support reliable and effective decisions to back affordable, clean solutions, resilience, security, competitiveness, stories of growth and prosperity. We could not know that geopolitics were going to come in our chances in such a powerful way. During the weekend, the whole MENA region has once again gone through hardship and pain. So allow me to express my deep solidarity to all those suffering the impacts, and allow me to make a new appeal to de-escalate and find peaceful ways to defend people and people's rights. Bombs and pain didn't come alone. Markets reacted, energy price surge, and confidence, that fragile but essential foundation of investments, may go down. Risk is priced daily into oil futures, into gas contracts, into sovereign spreads. The Strait of Hormuz is a systemic artery of the global economy, including, of course, LNG supply. Any disruption sends shockwaves through oil markets, gas prices, inflation expectations, and ultimately, growth, jobs, prosperity of normal people. Energy shocks do not stay confined. They test the resilience of our economies. They test the credibility of our institutions. And they test the unity of our union. So allow me to provide some comfort and relax by sharing with you a small joke I read this morning. The problem of fossil fuels is its intermittency, its lack of reliability. Let's start thinking differently. Because once again, the case for stability, affordability, and resilience is directly linked to our capacity to accelerate the transformation of our energy systems. The risk is not moving too fast. The real risk is moving too slowly. 4 years ago, natural gas from Russia started to phase out in the aftermath of the aggression against Ukraine. We Europeans work to ensure diversification, and it was a shock, both in Europe and in many other parts of the world. But the opportunities for further diversification are over. Qatar and United Arab Emirates shipping is being affected by the closure on the Strait of Hormuz. The US, from which we import 4 times more compared to 2021, gets the big share of our imports. Going from one dependency to another can't be Europe's model for resilience and competitiveness. That could have precisely the opposite effect of what we intend. We want to provide clear and predictable context for investors. But if we fail to go decisively with the clean transition, we risk freezing investments, discouraging those companies, innovators, financial institutions that have already aligned their capital with Europe's long-term strategy or are seriously willing to do so. What we don't want is a race to the bottom. We don't want a race to the bottom in labor standards, in environmental health. We don't want to identify as main priorities protected stranded assets, undermining those who invested early in clean technologies, electrification, efficiency, and resilience. The industrial and energy ecosystems have moved a lot. Those who trusted us and invested in green steel, in clean hydrogen, in battery value chains, in electrification, in new clean tech, those that did it in Europe, those that did it in the rest of the world, deserve that we stay the course. This is not the moment for ambiguity or for radical shift in our rule setting. Of course, we need flexibility. We need to be humble because we are learning. But we don't need pendular swings. This is why we like the idea to build a deeper union. One Europe, one market. To complete the capital markets union, to deepen energy integration and building the right infrastructures. To build a clean and electrified smart energy system based on homegrown solutions. To channel savings into productive, sustainable investment. And we don't want to do this alone. We need to work with our partners all over the world. The clean transition and the age of electricity is an opportunity for all to lower prices, to increase resilience, to decarbonize, to invest in our future. And this transition is accelerating across the world, with regions capturing the benefits. Africa's solar installation increased 54% in 2025 compared to the previous year. Renewables installed capacity is expected to double by 2030. And for every euro being invested in fossil fuels globally, 2 euros are now invested in clean energy. Last October, we adopted our global climate and energy vision, committing to keep on working with our partners in developing their own ambitious climate and energy policies, fostering carbon pricing, promoting standards for a fair transition, paying attention to resilience, building resilience, water, food security, health, resilient infrastructures, good services at the urban scale. Building new alliance and trade partnerships, as recently we have seen with different partners all over the world, is a much better idea than imposing models or retreating from cooperation and united efforts. The Global Gateway, for which we have proposed to increase budget to 200 billion euros for 2028 to 2034, is our most important bet in this field. 30% of the whole amount to be reallocated to climate and environmental goals. Africa is our neighbor. It is the continent of the youth. It is the land of opportunities. It is our partner, and we cannot forget about that. We want to stand ready to continue building coalitions, deepen our partnerships, accelerate the global clean transition, drive sustainable growth worldwide as a forward-looking and trusted partner. But we need to be clear. We need to build bridges, not cliffs. We need to join forces, not using the force. We need to come along with you, and we count on you. It may be not easy, but it's worth to fight for this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much to Teresa for opening up the afternoon sessions with such depth and positive outlooks as well. Now to move into the first panel discussion of the afternoon, which will be moderated by Ambroise Fayolle, who's Vice President of the European Investment Bank. He will be joined on stage by Sidi Ould Tah, who's President of the African Development Bank, Damilola Ogunbiyi, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General and CEO for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy, and Bertrand Piccard, chairman of Solar Impulse Foundation.
Good afternoon, dear friends, and it's really a pleasure to moderate this panel after the quite remarkable speech from Executive Vice President Ribeira. And actually, I would just like to make one comment on what we do at EIB on climate, because we are very proud that our strategy for the next 5 years, which is called our Climate Bank Roadmap #2, has been approved unanimously in last September. And it's very good news because not only it means that our objectives, our targets in terms of climate are shared by all European member states, which are the shareholders of the EIB, but also it means that they agree on something we have stressed in our strategy, which is the links between climate and competitiveness. And the fact that when we do climate projects, we also need to think in terms of how does it fit with smart economics, with the Clean Industrial Deal, with the strategies that are also behind this. And actually, it's also valid for simplification, especially for SMEs that we are implementing in the framework of this new strategy. But climate change is not a European problem, it is a global problem. And that's why we are extremely pleased to have here with us these great panelists, starting with Dr. Sidi Tah. Sidi is the new, we can still say that, Sidi, new president of the African Development Bank. I mean, he has been brilliantly elected 6 months ago. And it's going to be extremely interesting, Dr. Sidi, to hear your views about how climate works and how the African Development Bank helps climate developments in Africa. Damilola Ogunbiyi is also well known from many of you, and you will give us a more global perspective, even if as a Nigerian citizen, you also live in Lagos. but that's going to be also very interesting from us to hear your views from a more UN-like perspective. And Bertrand Piccard, of course, is not to be presented in this room. You were, Bertrand, the first speaker at the first forum that we had 3 years ago, and we are very thankful for your cooperation, and you will tell us a bit more about innovation, the way you feel about, and also the initiative that we work together with the Solar Impulse Foundation at EIB to develop energy efficiency in SMEs. Let me start with you, Sidi. I would just like to be interested in how you see opportunities in climate projects in Africa. How does the African Development Bank work on it? And how do you see the prospect for a stronger partnership with institutions like the European Investment Bank?
Thank you very much. Let me first commend the European Investment Bank for organizing this forum and also praise the quality of the partnership between the African Development Bank and EIB. It's really a very good example of MDBs working together, partnering to support the most vulnerable population in Africa. So thank you very much for your support and thank you for your partnership. So back to your question, let me start by recalling a few figures. So as you know, Africa accounts for around 3% of the global emission, but yet the continent is the most affected part of the world by extreme events linked to climate. So every day in Africa, we see floods, we see hurricanes, we see drought in various regions of Africa. So it's a reality in the continent. And this is affecting many sectors, affecting the agriculture, which is the basis for our food security. But it's also affecting our infrastructure. And this is why at the African Development Bank, we are focusing on resilient infrastructure. And this is one of my 4 cardinal points for the vision for the African Development Bank. Now let us talk about the opportunities, the challenges, and the opportunities. So as rightly mentioned by the Vice President of the European Commission, so we are neighbors. We are very close to each other, and we have too many things to share. And we do believe that today, Africa represents an opportunity for European investors and for European technology to contribute not only to the supplying the needed energy for the continent, the European continent, but also supporting the 600 million Africans who don't have access to electricity as we speak. So if we take solar energy, for instance, Africa has almost the sun 365 days a year. And in all parts of Africa, we have a huge potential for solar energy. If we take wind energy, most of the coastal part of Africa are really great areas for investment in wind energy. We have also hydro and geothermal energy potential. But unfortunately, so far, Africa is receiving only 2% of the investment in climate-related projects. And this has to change. And we are working together with the EIB and with other African partners, but also European partners. And this morning I had a very good meeting with the CEO of Cassa Depositi, which is another partner working with us as part of the Matei plan on renewable energies. So we do believe that today Africa, with more than 30% of the minerals, the world minerals deposits, and particularly critical minerals who are key for the energy transition. So Africa can provide the right place for European investors to invest. To invest not only to provide energy for Africa, but also to help to develop what is needed for the energy transition. Another area of potential investment in Africa is the green hydrogen. And countries like Namibia, Egypt, Morocco, Mauritania, and others can really provide huge opportunities for developing this green hydrogen, which is key for heavy industries in Europe. For instance, if we want to develop green steels, we need green hydrogen. So these are really key opportunities in the continent, and the fact that we are neighbors, we are very close to each other. It's just tenths of miles which separate some part of Europe to some part of Africa. We need really to develop this partnership, and it can be a great source of supply for energy for the continent.
Thank you, Sidi. And actually, at the EIB, we try to develop also this partnership. Ukraine is the first country of operation outside the European Union, but Africa is the first continent, and we have invested last year 3 billion euros in Africa, and half of that was to support climate-friendly investment, also investment in SMEs that are trying to do resilient investments. Thanks a lot, Sidi. Damilola, you are the representative of the Secretary General of the UN on SDG 7. So you're working on energy, sustainable energy for all. We would be very interested to listen from you about what you feel about the development of climate investment and competitiveness, but also which are the things that work less good, where we need to improve, and also which are your views more broadly, maybe not only Europe, Africa, but more broadly.
Okay, thank you so much. And just like President Ta, thank you for having me here today. I think I'll start with the positive note. One of the positive notes is that the energy transition cannot really be slowed down at this rate. Currently, in terms of electricity being generated globally by solar, hydro, geothermal, and some other types of renewable energy, we saw from 2020, where we had about 2,886 terawatt hours of electricity generated by that, to now where we're seeing over 10,700 terawatts of energy being generated by renewable forms like that, of which Europe is also leading the way. You know, the EU this year actually spent more on renewables than on fossil fuel for 2025. This is a huge signal of the fact that it's not just about climate, it also makes a really good business sense in terms of moving forward. We've also seen capital shift, you know, roughly according to the IEA, you have 3.3 trillion that was spent on the energy sector for electricity especially, and other energies, and 2.2 trillion of that was spent on renewables, again, because it makes a good business sense. So that's what's really the global outlook. But as the president of the AFDB said, that money isn't coming to all parts of the world, right? Asia is barely getting 4%, and in clean energy investment, I would struggle to see how we can say Africa is even getting 1% of that money, you know, and that is where the issue lies. A lot of money is concentrated in a certain place, but like you said, climate affects everyone. You can't just say, I did energy transition in my country, so I'm safe. You actually have to think about how it affects us as a global good. So I think those things are really important. The other part that's not important, that I feel like we're all failing behind, is in terms of clean infrastructure, especially grids. So already there's not enough financing going into grid infrastructure, even in the EU. But more importantly, the time it takes in terms of permitting and the bureaucracy around getting, you know, permits. These are just like basic things that's needed to build out these services. If we continue in this rate, it doesn't matter how much we spend on generation. If we don't have a specific focus on transmission, distribution, down to the last mile metering, right? To you actually connect the customer, you would have failed. So those are the things that keep me up at night, that there's a lot of money being pumped into generation, but there's not enough money being pumped and a lot of time and speed and scale onto the last mile of connecting the customer. I think that is important. So as we speak about energy transition and green growth, we have to also realize we're speaking to the privilege. We're speaking to, it's really nice to have energy and say, how can I make it cleaner? The truth is a lot of people around the world don't have that. In my continent, almost 600 million cannot say, you know, that they have any forms of electricity at all. So as we're doing that, we also have to understand that getting access to electricity and getting access to clean cooking is also part of the climate challenge. Because if that population of people get access using dirtier fuels, we're just going to come back and have to transition it. And that's why the work of AFDB is so important, because they want people to get access to clean energy from the start instead of coming back to transition. And that's why, you know, a program they're working on along with the World Bank, Mission 300, to provide electricity to 300 million Africans by 2030, of which, because I check the stats every single Friday, 44 million have already been connected. And there's an open dashboard for any of you guys to see how well things have been doing are so important. And I think this is where Europe really can also, you know, bridge that relationship with Africa as well. There's a lot of technology. In my days as a young engineer, I remember going around Europe, especially Germany, using SMA inverters and things like that. That was critical, but now you have players in China ready to do vendor financing for that. EIB also plays a role in getting the European equipment there, European vendors to Africa, so we can have a win-win situation, because the opportunity is there, and the average African is also not waiting. They want this electricity now, especially for the small businesses. Finally, I think what I would say is that, especially in the world we live in, collaborations are so key now. So no institutions, no organizations can do any of these things by themselves. And that's why I was so encouraged, I think last night we were speaking as well, of the AFDB and EIB relationship coming, so we have a force that can not only support things in Africa and other continents, but what happens in Europe is so important for the global good of how climate and decarbonization happens. And I feel like that is a key responsibility of the EU. And I'd really like to see how it materializes more moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let me just say that we too in Europe see the importance of grids. And this is one of the biggest investment needs that we have, and I like very much. Actually, we invest at EIB 50% of the total investments in grids in Europe, which means we are really investing a lot of financing, because it is absolutely key to get to the energy transition. Sidi, would you like to say a few words about because Damilola spoke about that, about the M300 initiative?
Yeah, I was about to jump in to talk about M300. So M300 is a very important initiative launched by the African Development Bank and the World Bank. And as we speak, more than 40 million Africans has received electricity for the first time. Still, we have a very long way to go. But what is important also is that we are expecting EIB to join us to support this great initiative. And the beauty of this initiative is that it is really changing the life and livelihood of hundreds of millions of Africans. And not only that, also enabling businesses to grow, and particularly micro, small, and medium enterprises in various parts of Africa, particularly in the countrysides, in rural areas, and in suburbs. And we really also see MS300 an opportunity to start with renewable energy instead of having to transition from fossil to clean energy. So we have the standalone solution, which are very, very, very relevant for rural areas where it will be difficult or sometimes very costly to bring the network, the grid. So sometimes standalone solution and based on solar and wind can really be very effective and very efficient.
Thank you very much, and you will not have to wait too long for seeing EIB joining. Actually, there is going to be an event later today with the President Calvino and you, actually. Bertrand. Actually, Bertrand, thank you also because you and Damilola, you are members of our advisory council on climate, which is chaired by the President of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, and that helps us shape our climate strategy, and that's really very, very useful to have your views in all those meetings to have EIB make a better climate policy. But my question to you would be, you meet with a lot of innovators, a lot of entrepreneurs. Do they see that clean investments are good for economics? Do they see the thing that you are promoting a lot, which is this is smart economics, this is modernization is key? Are they convinced of that, or are there still doubts?
Yeah, thank you, Ambroise. Good afternoon to everyone. The answer is yes and no, and I'm going to explain why. You have to notice that the name of this panel is Climate and Competitiveness. If you speak of climate, you say that you have to decarbonize with renewable energies, clean technologies, and be more energy efficient to save energy. And in a lot of countries, a lot of companies, when you say that, you have the answer that you are a green activist from the left wing, that you want to fight against capitalism, you want to fight against the industry, you want to degrow the economy, and you want the ruin of our system. But when you speak of competitiveness, what do you say? Exactly the same thing. We need renewable energies, we need clean technologies, and we need energy efficiency. It's interesting to see that you create a complete different result when you just change the name of what you're speaking about. If you want to be competitive in Europe, you need to get rid of fossil fuels. It's not a question of climate, it's a question of survival. If we invest hundreds of billions of euros into fossil fuels, what do we have at the end of the year? Smoke and CO2. It has been burned, you have nothing left, and you have to buy it again for the following year. If you invest into renewable energies, the same amount of money, what do you have at the end of the year? You have local facilities producing electricity at the cheapest price in the world with local workers and local jobs. If you invest in clean technologies, you have the result here in the way of being more energy efficient. What is energy efficiency? Energy efficiency is not sobriety. It's not about consuming less and reaching less. Energy efficiency is reaching more and better with less consumption and less waste, which means that you have a higher profit margin because you are more profitable and you save all the additional costs that you would have in wasting money, resources, and energy. You know, I don't know exactly for Europe, but for the entire world, the energy that is wasted every year costs $4.6 trillion. It's not a question of climate, it's a question of money. We need to go into a society in order to be more competitive and more rich, a society that is efficient, running on renewables. So this is economic, it's policy, its competitiveness, its independence, its sovereignty. Now the question is, how do we reach it? And it's interesting to see that when we speak like this, a lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of big multinationals will say, oh, okay, if it's not for climate, but it's for competitiveness, then we're interested. But we have to invest an upfront investment. We have to change everything. Basically, we have to change everything. We have to change our industrial processes, our motors, our engines, our grid, everything. And it needs a lot of investment. So maybe we'll do it, but later. And this is a survey that we have done with the 1,650 innovators that the Solar Impulse Foundation has labeled, identified, and is promoting now. We went to see them and said, you have these solutions. They allow the world to be efficient. Why are they not implemented? And this is really the answer, because the clients don't want to invest the upfront investment, even if it is profitable on the total time of ownership. So we need to solve this, exactly this. And I got a fantastic welcome by Ambroise and Nadia when I came 2 years ago, and I spoke about my dream. Having a company providing efficient solutions, arriving to the customer and say, we install it for free. You don't want to invest? No problem. We put it for free. You will save 10, 20, 30% in your energy bill, and a part of it will be paid to a fund that has invested into this product in order for you to use it for free. Basically, you allow the customer to buy the service instead of buying the ownership. So you have no upfront investment. You just pay back a part of your saving to the fund, who will earn between 4 and 6%, 4 to 8% in return every year. And the EIB was fascinated by the idea, thought that they could launch a project, and within 2 years, they have appointed Solas and FL, 2 fund managers, with respectively 100 million and 60 million, to make 2 lighthouse projects, lighthouse funds, to prove that it works. And the European Commission has promised that if it works, they will put in money in order to support 350,000 SMEs in Europe with a total of 65 billion euros. So you see, we are not here in a vague idea of knowing if maybe we are more competitive, if we are more efficient, if we are more sovereign, if we have more renewables. No, we are in the heart of the action, investing money to bring the solutions to the SMEs, allowing them to be more profitable, allowing them to be richer, and all this is a virtuous circle, because if it works on these type of SMEs, it will work on the others, and we can make a real change. And a real change, that means to make Europe not only more competitive, but to make it more efficient, more modern. And then, if we are more modern, decarbonization will just be the logical consequence of modernization. So you reach the end goal, but through another circle that will create much more support, much more wealth, and much more success.
Thank you very much, Bertrand. And it's true that it has been really a fascinating journey to put in place this, what we hope will not be only pilot operations with FL and Solas, but recipe for success that can be implemented and scaled up, because at the end of the day, what does matter is scale up. We have a few minutes left if there are questions. Do you want my microphone, sir?
Merci beaucoup. Hello, hi. Ciprian Stănescu from Romania. I have a question to all of you, but it also deals with what you said and what you said at the beginning. There's another word which we couldn't put in the panel, which is strategic autonomy, I think we call it these days, right? And one part of strategic autonomy comes from critical minerals. What is your view on getting from the earth, through mining usually, critical minerals, to push for autonomy in clean tech? Because if you talk about wind turbines, if you talk about batteries, it doesn't matter. You still need cobalt, nickel, et cetera, et cetera. So it sort of almost defies the purpose if you just look at it simplistically. But how can we create strategic autonomy for Europe and Africa, why not, through critical minerals, but paying attention not to add more pressure on the climate by building clean tech? So, you know, it's a bit twisted, but I think the question is quite obvious. Thank you.
Today, Europe is able to buy critical materials at a good price. I have no idea what it will be in 5 or 10 years. But what I know is that if we wait for 5 or 10 years to buy these critical materials, to buy more solar panels, to buy more wind turbines, to buy more permanent magnets and electric motors, we might be in trouble and might be dependent, and there might be some blackmail on Europe. This is why we have to do it now. We have to buy as much as we can of all these technologies now, because they last for 30 years. They last for 30 years. In 30 years, the world will be different anyway. So we need to be independent for the next 30 years and not wait at all. Because now we are dependent on oil, but we are sovereign for everything else. We can get the supply everywhere. We have to keep this in mind. I think it's really important.
I have a slightly different view, obviously, because I'm not in Europe just buying stuff and not have enough money to do that. I think we need to be really responsible about our mining practices. I think there's a kind of, as long as it turns up in my show, it doesn't really matter how it was done, where it was done, especially in the global south. I think it's also really responsible and imminent to make sure that countries in the global south, of which many of this equipment already comes from Africa, does some level of beneficiation in continent. So some level of production. So in my country, Nigeria, lithium is taken out, sent to China, and then sold back to Nigeria for 100% the price. That doesn't make sense to me. There needs to be a win-win situation. Again, I'm not saying that Nigeria becomes a new battery hub, but there are other parts of Africa that can do that. But there needs to be some level of beneficiation in that country before it goes out. So the pricing then does actually reflect what you're actually buying. Right now, unfortunately, some countries have got used to just buying cheap raw materials and critical minerals. And I think if we are responsible and if we do have a true Africa-Europe partnership, we have to look at that and make sure it's win-win moving forward.
No, so thank you, Damilola, for taking that point, which I was also planning to take. But let me, since we are talking about competitiveness, so the feasibility study done by Bloomberg for AFDB and other African financial institutions shows that it is more efficient and more economical to produce battery precursor in DRC and Zambia than in any other place in the world. So this is an invite for partnership between European investors and African owners of minerals to develop a win-win partnership where some type of beneficiation is started in Africa, and then we can move to Europe to have more sophisticated output. But it's key for Africa at this stage not to continue to export raw materials. because that really is depriving Africa from a huge potential, and it's not competitive. So let me step back.
Thank you very much. And let me also add one thing. There was a summit between the European Union and the African Union in November, I think, in Luanda, Angola. And clearly one of the key items for strategic partnerships between the European Union and Africa was on critical raw material and how we can both develop this project of this kind and also indeed develop the industry that could go around in Africa. Can I ask you to join me in thanking a lot our panelists for this great panel?
Thank you so much. Thank you to all our panelists and that wonderful conversation. And I know we have an increase in numbers now coming in.